I ordered a brand new plant, the Golden Goose. It's gonna do more yardage than any of the plants we have here. It's gonna have a good recovery rate, and it's brand new, so it should have really good uptime.
$1 million, wired out of Parker account before he has watched the wash plant run a single yard. The Golden Goose just rolled into the Klondike yard in pieces, 45 tons of unproven steel scattered across gravel. And the only thing standing between Parker and a wrecked season is whether this bird actually flies. Toupee Mountains sit 4,000 feet apart on his claim, stockpiled and waiting. The freeze is closing in. 10,000 ounces of fine Yukon gold, roughly $35 million at $3,500 an ounce, is still on the line. If the goose stalls, his year is finished. If she runs, Parker just outthought every miner in the Yukon. 7 days to find out which.
With gold prices where they're at, it's hit a whole bunch of record highs, and who knows how long these prices will last. We're just shy of 10,000 ounces. It's just like a hell of a year to be mining gold.
Welcome to the Golden Goose. The Yukon mining season runs on a brutal calendar. Thaw arrives in May. Freeze locks the ground back down by October. Everything in between is a sprint, and Parker has been sprinting since he was a teenager. He took over Big Nugget at 16, walked away from college money to run his own ground, and built the operation that now stretches across the Klondike, claim by claim, plant by plant.
You find anything?
What do you think, Grandpa?
Oh my! Ooh, that is beautiful.
Here's another one. Isn't that awesome?
I won't be able to sleep.
This year, the math has gone sideways. The Golden Mile, the 4,000-foot stretch of pay dirt that anchors Parker's operation, is running out of road. A few weeks back, Parker made a calculated gamble that everyone around him quietly thought was insane. He shut down all sluicing on the Golden Mile, not slowed it, stopped it. He told his crew to stockpile every last scoop of pay and let it sit in 2 massive mountains while the rest of the season ticked away. To anyone watching from outside the operation, that decision looked like throwing weeks of the season into the trash. Inside the trailer, Parker was running a different kind of math. The plants on the ground can't process pay fast enough to hit the season target. Parker needs more horsepower, and he needs it now. So he wires $1 million for a brand new wash plant, sight unseen, and bets the back half of his year on it landing in time. 1 signature, 1 wire transfer, 1 piece of equipment Parker has never laid eyes on, sitting on a truck somewhere between the factory and the Klondike. That plant just rolled in. They call it the Golden Goose. The trailers pull into the yard. The crew unloads 45 tons of steel onto a patch of gravel. Skids, hopper, bear, sluice, run extensions, hydraulic lines, decking. The plant arrives the way every wash plant arrives in pieces, with a build deadline that doesn't care how new the equipment is.
The Golden Goose is here.
Wash plant number 5.
Right on.
New toys, man, new toys.
Hopefully it lives up to its name.
Parker stands in front of the steel and lays out the case for the buy. He says he is hopeful it would live up to its name. He says it would do more yardage than any plant they have on the property. He says it would have a good recovery rate. He says it should have really good uptime because it's brand new. He says it had come at a very good time because he had a lot of sluicing to do. That is the optimistic version. The other half of the sentence sits unspoken across the yard. If the goose does not run, the season is over. The stockpiled pay never gets processed. The 10,000-ounce target slips. The $1 million becomes a piece of expensive scrap on a frozen claim. The trailers are unloaded. The parts are laid out. Parker turns to the crew and tells them to put her together. Jeff Turnell is already on the ground, walking the build sequence with the team. Jordy is staging the excavator. Alec Kelly and Liam Bucella have the waterline plan. Max is on call to anchor the lift when the wind comes up. Every member of the crew has a job, and every job has to land inside the same 7-day window. Outside that window, the plant is just expensive scrap, and the season is gone. Chasing the 10,000. The number that drives every decision in this yard is 10,000 ounces. At $3,500 an ounce, that target is roughly $35 million in fine Yukon gold, pulled from a few hundred acres of frozen creek bed in less than 6 months of running time. The math breaks down to roughly 440 ounces a week. Not in a good week, every week. Parker has been falling behind that line for stretches of the season, and the calendar is not waiting. He's watched the daylight hours start to creep shorter on either end of the day. He's watched the gold price drift the wrong way. He's watched the cleanup numbers come up short of the line he needs them at, week after week. The pay piles on the Golden Mile keep growing, and the season keeps shrinking.
It's come at a very good time because we have a lot of sluicing to do, and this plant, I'm sure it's going to get the job done.
Every yard of dirt sitting in a stockpile is a yard that isn't on a scale, and Parker knows it. The Golden Mile is the engine. Right now, it is also a graveyard of stacked pay dirt waiting to be processed. The two pay mountains sit on opposite ends of the claim, 4,000 feet between them, roughly the length of 2 football fields end to end. Parker already has Big Red, his veteran wash plant, eating away at one of the 2 piles. The Golden Goose, when it comes alive, will start chewing through the second pile from 4,000 feet away. 2 giant mountains, 2 plants, 1 sprint to the finish line. The plan has logic to it on a whiteboard. On a frozen claim, with a build deadline ticking down, it has a different feel. Every member of the crew working on the Goose knows what's stockpiled behind them. Every cubic yard sitting in those 2 mountains is a yard that needs a plant to process it before October, or it doesn't get processed at all. The crazy part is, the Goose hasn't run a single yard yet. Parker has the strategy mapped out, the pay stockpiled, the crew in place, and Big Red already biting into 1 pile. The other pile sits untouched, waiting on a machine that is, at this exact moment, 45 tons of parts on gravel. Every plant on the property has a job. Big Red holds down one end of the Golden Mile. Wash Plant Bob is working a separate cut. Roxanne is running ground at Ken and Stewart's claim. Each one is contributing weekly ounces against the 440 target. None of them, on their own, can make up the gap Parker built into the season when he shut down the Golden Mile. The Goose is the answer, on paper. The Goose is also a machine that has never moved a grain of pay. 270 yards an hour is a number on a spec sheet right now, not a number on a yardage counter. Until the plant actually runs at that capacity for a full shift, it's a promise, not a result. If the build slips by even a few days, the second pile sits frozen under snow before the year is out. Every hour the parts sit unbolted is an hour the math gets harder. The build begins. Parker brings in Jeff Turnell, a wash plant expert who has spent years assembling these machines in the world's least forgiving conditions. Jeff knows this build. He knows the upgrades Parker ordered, the sluice run extensions, and the modifications to the deck that are supposed to make the Goose run faster and cleaner than anything else on the property.
This plant's got to run a lot of material. There's a few upgrades that we've done. We got the sluice run extensions. That was an add-on that Parker wanted. We've done some modifications to the deck to make it better, to make it more efficient, so it's faster in the field.
Jeff walks the deck before the lift starts. He talks the crew through what the upgrades change. The sluice run extensions add length to the recovery surface, which means more time for fine gold to settle into the mats before the water carries it off the back. The deck modifications make the plant more efficient in the field, faster to set, faster to feed. On paper, the Goose is the most capable wash plant Parker has ever owned. On paper, Parker walks up to the crew and lays out the assembly sequence. Lift the main plant, slide the skids underneath, slam the pins in, throw the hopper on, drop the bear. Then it's just a bunch of little pieces until you have a wash plant. A bunch of little pieces. That is how he frames $1 million of unproven steel that has to be running at full tilt by the end of the week. The deadline isn't soft. End of the week is when the second pay pile has to start moving. End of the week is when the math on 10,000 starts to look possible again. Every day past that, the season target slides. Jeff agrees with the timeline. The plant has to run a lot of material, and the upgrades, the sluice run extensions, the deck modifications, are designed to make that possible. The point of the build is not just standing the Goose up. The point is standing her up fast enough to claw back the days the operation has already lost to the stockpile decision. The first job is the foundation. The hydraulic skids are the metal feet that the entire 45-ton plant will sit on. Without them in place and pinned correctly, nothing else on the plant matters.
My plan right now is to lift the main plant up. We'll put the skids underneath it and slam in the pins. Throw the hopper on and the bear, and then it's just a bunch of little pieces to turn it into a plant. Sounds good.
The skids let the goose move on uneven ground and lock down once she's in position. Bad pin work here, and the entire plant sits crooked for the rest of the build. Jordy works the controls of the excavator, lifting the main body up so the skids can slide underneath. The crew waits on the ground with the skid units, ready to push them into position the moment the main body clears. Then the wind picks up. In the open Yukon yard, with a load this heavy hanging from a boom, drift is the enemy. The plant doesn't sit still waiting for the pins to line up. It floats, it slides sideways. It creeps forward when the crew needs it to stop, and stops when they need it to move. Parker watches it sway and calls Max in to anchor one end, give the crew a fighting chance. The plant is still drifting. Parker makes the call. Let's just not mess around. Let's just put it under now. Get the skids in. Don't wait for perfect. Jordy lowers the plant. The skids slide. Someone calls down a smidge, then a little more. The plant creeps toward the pinholes a few inches wide, the only target on a structure the size of a small house. Drift catches it at the worst moment. There's a shout, a correction, then a clean window. Parker calls for the hit. Someone swings the sledge. The first pin drives home, one side seated. The crew swings to the other side, still drifting. Parker calls again. The sledge swings. The second pin drives, both sides locked. Skids in. Hard part done for this step.
It's kind of trying to line pins up when it's drifting.
Get ready.
Okay, guys, we're lined up.
Yeah. Hit it, hit it.
The hopper still has to drop on. The bear still has to mount. The sluice run extensions still have to bolt up. The hydraulics still have to bleed clean. Every hour the crew spends on those little pieces is an hour the second pay pile isn't moving, and the calendar keeps ticking. The crew works through the next stages without a break. The hopper drops onto the main deck. The bear gets craned into position and bolted down. The sluice run extensions bolt up at the back of the plant, adding the recovery surface that's supposed to give the goose her edge over Big Red, Bob, and Roxanne. Hydraulic lines get routed, bled, and pressure checked. Every connection is one more thing that has to hold under load. Parker walks through the yard, checking torque marks, checking line routing, watching Jeff and the build crew move from station to station. The deadline doesn't move. End of the week. The crew keeps building. The water problem. While the main body of the goose is being stitched onto its skids, Alec Kelly and Liam Buchella work on the problem that could quietly kill the build before it ever runs a yard. The two mechanics drag the water line into place. A wash plant doesn't move a single grain of pay dirt without water, and the Golden Goose isn't a plant that drinks lightly. To run 270 yards an hour, the goose needs a torrent, not a trickle, not a steady flow. A torrent, hour after hour, day after day, until the second pay pile is gone. The run from the water source up to the goose is long, maybe too long. Every extra foot of line is more friction, more pressure loss, more risk that the pump can't deliver the volume the plant needs at the deck. If the pump can't push enough water up that line, the goose can't run at full capacity. Parker's yardage targets evaporate. The whole reason he wired $1 million goes up in smoke. Alec lays out the stakes plainly as he works. The main concern is not getting enough water to the goose. Without the volume, they aren't using the plant to its max potential, and they aren't going to run the yardage Parker wants.
The main concern we're going to be having is if we can't get enough water going to goose, then we're not using it to its max potential, and we're not going to be able to run the yardage Parker wants. This might have just been all for nothing.
He muscles the suction basket into place and says it plain. This might have just been all for nothing. Liam stages the line on the plant side. The hose runs back along the ground in long black coils. The pump waits at the source, primed and quiet. Alec calls the go. The pump fires. Every set of eyes in earshot tracks the line and the gauge, watching for any sign that water is going to make it the full distance. The line shudders. There's a delay that feels longer than it is. Then water comes, loading up, climbing the run, reaching the plant. The first pulse hits the deck with that wet, hollow thump that means the line is sealed and the system is alive. Ready when you are, Buttercup. Alec watches the gauge for a few more seconds. The pump holds pressure. The line stays sealed. The water keeps climbing the run, keeps reaching the deck, keeps feeding the plant the volume it needs. The waterline problem is, for now, not a problem. The pump fires up. The water keeps coming. The Goose has water on the deck. The hopper is open. The mats are laid in the sluice runs. Jeff signals the all clear. The crew radios the excavator. The plant is ready for its first scoop. The first scoop. Parker stands back from the deck, hands in his pockets, watching the new plant idle. Jeff Turnell keeps his eyes on the sluice run, looking for the first sign of trouble. The crew waits. The water is on. The hopper is open. The mats are dry, ready for their first wash of Yukon ground. The excavator swings. The bucket loads up. The first scoop of Yukon ground rolls into the hopper of the Golden Goose. The plant moves. The deck shakes. The sluice runs flow. Black sand and gravel tumble down the run. The mats catch what they're supposed to catch. The rejects fly off the back the way the rejects are supposed to fly off the back. The Goose is doing exactly what every wash plant on Parker's property has done for years, only she's doing it brand new, on her first hour of life. On a build that finished one day before deadline, Parker's reaction is short. Hell yeah, it's exciting. Jeff calls it from his side of the deck. Congratulations on your new purchase. I'm just glad it worked. Parker doesn't stay still. He turns to the crew and pushes for yardage. So what? Did you want to go for yardage on this? Like 220 yards an hour? 230? 270? 270? What's the point of having a brand new plant if you're not going to push it?
Did you want to go for yardage on this, like 220 yards an hour?
I just put it up a little more. Is 270 yards an hour. What's the point of having a brand new plant if you're not gonna like thunder it?
Parker did not wire $1 million to run the Goose at the same speed as the plants he already owns. He bought speed. He bought a chance to claw back the weeks lost while the plant was on a truck somewhere in transit. The Goose has to run faster than anything else on the property, or the gamble doesn't pay. The crew dials the feed up. The excavator works the stockpile harder. Pay dirt drops into the hopper at 270 yards an hour, and the Goose chews through it without a stumble. Jeff watches the deck. He watches the sluice runs. He watches the rejects come off the back. The plant holds at full feed. That number 270 yards an hour is the heart of the whole bet. It's the reason for the deck modifications. It's the reason for the sluice run extensions. It's the reason Parker spent $1 million instead of leaning harder on the plants he already owned. Big Red runs lower. Bob runs lower. Roxanne runs lower. The Goose, on her first shift, is already doing more yardage per hour than any other plant on the property, exactly what Parker said she would when he wired the money. The promise is starting to look like a result. A little later in the yard, the crew jokes about the name. Parker says, the Goose is not a name that demands authority. You bring a loaf of bread every time you go do a cleanup. He says a buddy of his suggested it, but he doesn't really like it, so he's calling the new plant Gigi the Supermodel instead. Gigi the Supermodel dialed in at 270 yards an hour on her first cuts of Yukon ground. The weekly weigh-in. The season turns into a math problem on a scale. Parker needs to average 440 ounces a week to hit 10,000. Below that line, he loses ground. Above it, he runs with the season instead of against it. Every week the cuts get weighed, and the truth comes out in ounces. The crew gathers around the scale. Each plant's gold from the week comes in a clean haul, weighed publicly, counted up in front of the whole operation. There's no spin in this room. The number is the number. The crew watches it land, Parker watches it land. The week either holds up against the math, or it doesn't. The cleanups go up one at a time. Big Red first, then Wash Plant Bob, then Roxanne. Each plant's gold goes on the scale, and the crew counts the weight up in real time, ounce by ounce, until the season total at the bottom is the only number that matters. Big Red on the Golden Mile pulls in 140.7 ounces. At $3,500 an ounce, that one cut is worth roughly $492,000. Solid for that plant. Parker nods. Big Red is doing what Big Red does.
20, 40, 80, 100, 130, 140.7.
Nice.
That's all right.
That's good for Big Red.
Yeah.
Wash Plant Bob, working the bridge cut, has been hovering above 100 ounces a week for the last month. This week, Bob comes in at 127.4 ounces, roughly $445,000 on the scale. Steady, dependable, boring. Parker shrugs at the name. It could be worse. The crew laughs. Bob keeps quietly putting numbers on the board. Roxanne sluiced all week at Ken and Stewart's. The number Roxanne needs to hit to keep Parker on track is 172 ounces. The crew counts the weight up. 40, 50, 60, 90, 110, 130, 153.2, roughly $536,000 at $3,500 an ounce. Short of the target line, but close, and Gigi isn't in the numbers yet. Parker hasn't run her long enough to count her into the weekly cleanup. That number is coming. The next weigh-in is the one where the goose's first cuts show up on the scale, and that is the number Parker is really waiting on. Once Gigi gets back into the mix, it'll be good. Yeah, so then we're back in the big numbers again. Last week, the operation pulled in 317.25 ounces. This week, 421.3 ounces, roughly $1.5 million on the spot.
Well, last week it was 317.25 ounces, and this week is 421.3. So yeah, we're going up.
The week's number crosses the 440 target Parker has been chasing all season for the first time. In a stretch, the operation ran with the math instead of against it. The jump is more than 100 ounces week over week, 317 to 421. That kind of climb in a single week, before the new plan is even counted, is the first sign the operation has the horsepower to claw back the ground it gave up earlier in the season. The season total ticks up to 7,787.1 ounces. 8,000 by next week is the next gate. Cross it, and 10,000 stays alive. Miss it, and the math starts asking ugly questions. Let's hope for a warm fall. The final sprint. The Golden Mile operation is back to full force. Big Red hammers one pay pile from one end. The Golden Goose, dialed in at 270 yards an hour, hammers the other from 4,000 feet away. The pay mountains start to shrink. 2 wash plants run at the same time on the same claim, and the season starts to look savable. Across the property, the rest of the fleet is feeding the same target. Wash plant Bob keeps grinding through the bridge cut. Roxanne keeps running ground at Ken and Stewart's. 4 plants on the board, all of them putting weekly ounces against the 440 line. Parker does the math out loud. The pay stack behind him is close to 1,000 hours of sluicing. There's not much more than 1,000 hours left in the season. The numbers line up almost perfectly, and that almost is the entire problem. One breakdown, one frozen line, one bad week of weather, and the math goes the wrong way. Sprint to the finish line. That is the assignment for the rest of the year.
This new plant's really nice. We've got a mountain of pay back there to run. That is close to 1,000 hours of sluicing. And there's not much more than 1,000 hours left in the season. So now it's time to sprint to the finish line.
Big Red, the Goose, Bob, and Roxanne are all running. The crew is pushing yardage. The water is holding. Jeff Turnell's upgrades are doing on dirt what they were designed to do on the spec sheet. The build deadline that loomed over the start of the week is in the rear view, and the season is back in motion. The decision to shut down the Golden Mile and stockpile, the wire transfer, the 7-day build, the long water line, the wind on the lift, the pin work on the skids, every call Parker made under pressure is now sitting behind him as work that got done. What's in front of him is yardage, hours, and weather. Parker says they've got a real shot at making this happen. 4 plants back up and running. The Goose finally biting into the second pile. Weekly numbers climbing the right way. The 421-ounce week was the first real signal the week the operation crossed the target line on the math, with Gigi not yet counted. The pay piles are still standing. The freeze is still coming. The Goose still has to run 1,000 hours without a major breakdown. The water still has to keep climbing that long line. The weather still has to hold. Parker still has to cross every weekly gate from here to October, but the math is alive. 10,000 ounces is back on the table. 8,000 by next week, then 9,000, then 10,000 even. Each gate is one more weigh-in, one more count up the scale, one more chance for the Goose to prove the $1 million gamble was the right call all along. The Yukon will decide the rest from here. The crew has already done its part of the work. So here's the question for you. Would you have shut down the Golden Mile and stockpiled the way Parker did, betting the season on a brand new plant that hadn't run a single yard? Or would you have kept the old plants running flat out and skipped the million-dollar gamble entirely? Drop your call in the comments, and if you want to see whether Gigi actually gets Parker to 10,000, hit subscribe and stick around for the next cleanup.